Welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to be breaking down a super fire Don Toliver style sample. I watched the trailer for his album and it had a snippet in there, kind of Latin, piano, guitar based, so I tried to replicate something like that. So I made this sample, then I added some drums to it, and yeah, let's get into it. So I started off in Contact with this Piano in Blue preset. It's super fire, very clean piano, and I put down this progression. I'll play it and I'll talk about it a little bit more afterwards. So this is in G harmonic minor, starting off with a very simple G minor chord, and the same chord here as well, but I've inverted it so the G is on top. I've done this to create more of a bounce within the sample, but also to give it a variation so it's not the same exact chord hitting twice in a row. Then we're bringing in the harmonic notes. So this is the harmonic note, it's the 7th, would normally be here on the F, but it's in the F sharp. Again, these two are the same chords, just inverted differently. And then finally is a C minor chord. I've just brought this up just to kind of fill the same space and frequencies, and then the final chord is the same as this one, just repeated with the A note on top as well. Again, a few top line notes here and here, and a few more towards the end of the loop. Second half is just the same. Actually, it's slightly different. These last two chords are different. Well, this chord is different. We've added that in, and the last chord is the same, and then these top line notes as well. For the effects, I started off with a compressor, pretty standard. I use this on all my pianos. Then I actually added a guitar amp to it. I just like the sound it gives. The Archetype by Corey Wong. It's the Jazzbox preset. I've also brought down the mix quite a lot just so it's not too present, and then an EQ, cutting some of the highs out, cutting some lows out, and some mid-range frequencies as well. So now it sounds like this. Next, I went into Contact again and I opened up session horns. These are really good for realistic sounding horns. I went into the settings and you can change what it sounds like. So you can get more of a stab sound or a longer note or a more simple one. But this faux peak, I'm not even going to pronounce it, that one, it kind of builds in and swells up. I think it sounded really good. So without any effects on, it sounds like this. So that sounds good, but it's not exactly where I wanted it to be. So I added a cassette to give it a real vintage feel. I used the Fuzzy Vox preset. I added a spring reverb, kind of medium on the mix. An EQ, cutting some lows out. A light delay just to give it a little bit of depth. And that sounds like this. After that, I added a bass just to give some low end. Again, that has a Corey Wong Archetype bass amp and a very simple EQ, just cutting around 40 Hertz. Then I moved on to adding some percussion to the sample. So I started off with this bongo and just did this pattern. Then I added another bongo which kind of hits like a snare would. And finally, this little stick snap kind of sound. Then what I did was bounce it to audio, add some EQ and a little bit of reverb just to drown it out so it's not so present. As you heard at the end of that loop, there's a little guitar lick. I added that from the Elia FMov guitars in Contact, and it's just this very simple melody here. Finally, I added a little vocal run just at the end of the bar. It kind of matches up with the guitar actually. So without any effects on, it sounds like this. I just added an altar boy, I pitched it all the way up, brought the formant down, and a medium size Valhalla vintage verb to drown it out and push it back in the mix. As always, I like to keep it pretty simple, so that's everything I added to the sample. Then I bounced it to audio and opened a different FLP and started on the drums. I actually really love the drums on this one. They came out super bouncy, super fire. So I first started off with this rim shot. Now that sounds good, but I wanted to layer it and make it a little bit more textured. So I added another rim shot on top of that, but what I did was go to this little setting here and just very, very slightly push the stereo delay up. Essentially what that does is widen it and just give it a lot more depth to the snare. So together they sound like this. Normally I'd go onto the hi-hats after that, but for this one I started with the 808. With the 808s on this one is they're kind of following the bounce of the sample. I find drums are really easy to add if you already have a bounce in the sample. That's why playing around with the chord progressions and the percussion within the sample can make it a lot easier when you go to flip it. After that I did go onto the hi-hats. Pretty simple. I kind of followed the bounce again and left some notes out, kept some in, added a few rolls. After that is a little open hat just towards the end of the 4 bars. Then a pretty simple kick, just kind of following their 808s. I also added this little stick percussive sound from my drum kit. I only let it hit towards the end of the 8 bars because I used it as like a transition, and I've also pitched it down to the G, so about 5 semitones. Finally, I've added these straight hi-hats. They come in at certain points throughout the beat just to give a little bit of variety and speed up the flow of it a little bit. So those are all the elements of the beat. Again, pretty simple. I like to leave a lot of room for the artist. In terms of structuring, I started off with the whole sample playing, so all the elements. Then when the drums come in, I've pitched it down an octave, and I think it's just the piano and a few of the other elements, taking out the bass, stuff like that. As you can see, I cut out all the drums at this point and just left the stick sound. As I said earlier, I used it as like a transition to go into the next part of the beat. This is pitched back up an octave, and then for the chorus section, it's also pitched up an octave. It's got all the drums in, and I believe the brass and all the pianos are playing as well. Okay, so that's my attempt at a Don Toliver Latin style beat. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next one.